What is going on, guys? We are back with the Terminator Cobra, and now it has been a week already since we originally tore this down. I have not really made much progress other than ordering a few little parts, getting a few more parts, which I'll show you guys that here really soon. Our goal in this video is to hopefully get this engine trans stuffed into the car, but we got to do some more prep in the meantime, and we got to get the trans stabbed into the clutch and everything. So let's get the engine pulled out of here. We got to reorganize everything. Everything's a little bit messy. Yeah, we had a busy week. I tuned a Pro-Charged A10 Mustang. It's Goose. I did the Holley high rim. Swap on Jordan's car, which I'll have a video on that as well. Yeah, just a really busy week. I also got sick, so it's been a mess of a week, but hopefully we can hit the ground running and make some good headway on the Cobra. I don't know if it'll fire up today, but we could get close. Okay guys, so if you noticed in the last video, we got the Metco 6-pound lower, we have Metco idlers, and a lot of Metco parts. We got this Metco bracket here, but we didn't have an alternator. Well, right here, we have the KMJ alternator. If you guys know, these are pretty much your standard in 0304 Cobra charging. These things have a lot of issues with charging and keeping 14 volts. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this in, but we also have the wire upgrade, the big 3. So we're gonna be installing that as well. It looks like we have the instructions there. I think we have to grind the alternator bracket just a little bit for the bigger case on this alternator, but let's go ahead and get started. All right, so one of the things I just realized is the Mach 1 oil cooler that was on there is not gonna work with the 0304 Cobra alternator setup. So I actually purchased this in the meantime. There is one on the original engine, but I really don't wanna work on cleaning it and mixing all that stuff up. It's RTV'd as well. So we got a fresh oil cooler here. We also got the rebuild kit. So we got a new gasket there, and we have all new O-rings as well. So we're gonna take a look, see what we gotta do to rebuild this thing. So I don't really know too much about it. I know obviously there's an O-ring there. It's fairly easy, but yeah, I might have to watch a video on this or something. It's been a while. And then over here, we have my oil pressure gauge, oil pressure sensor. So what we're gonna do is I just took out this little cap right there, and we're gonna run the AM oil pressure sensor in there, and then we're gonna keep the stock one just so that the cluster is happy. That way we have a real reading. So conveniently, the Mach 1 already had the right rig to convert from this to 1/8" NPT. So as you can see, we're pretty much all ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and use some Teflon tape on there, but that's gonna be our rig on our oil pressure sensor. And then obviously OEM, boom, ready to rock. So let's go ahead and tackle the O-ring rebuild. I got the center taken apart. You can see that there's a bunch of O-rings in here. They don't look in terrible shape. This one looks a little squished down, but what we're gonna go ahead and do is just replace every O-ring in here, clean this all out, make sure it's all good, and make sure it's not gonna leak. All right, and that is the completed rebuilt oil cooler with oil pressure sensor and the factory sensor. So the factory sensor doesn't really do anything other than say yay or nay it has oil pressure, but this little AM sensor will link into the MS3, as well as it will be a gauge as well. So now we're gonna get this back on the car so we can install the alternator. Okay guys, so we got the oil cooler installed. Don't assemble it off the car, because if you don't put that one bolt in, it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I disassembled the 2 pieces, bolted on the block, and then slid this on and made sure the O-ring didn't get collapsed or fall or anything. So we're now good to go, and now we can install our alternator. So the KMJ alternator does require a little bit of clearancing. If you look back here, there is this area where it makes contact right there. So we're just gonna remove a little bit of material back there. So that way this can sit and it'll sit properly on there. It is also detailed in the instruction guide, but basically we're just removing a little bit of material. We're gonna go ahead and get that knocked out and then continue on the rest of the assembly process. You can see the oil cooler's on. We got our both oil pressure sensors looking pretty good. Slowly but surely making some progress. All right guys, so I just went ahead and grinded the alternator bracket. You don't need to take much material off. You're basically just removing a little bit from there, doing it so that you have a little bit. This basically just gets a little closer there. It's also detailed in the instructions. So now I'm gonna take this apart, get the bracket on the engine, and start getting the alternator mounted up. And by the way, the reason why you're grinding this is because this is actually a bigger alternator. Ford really lacked on the alternator sizing on the 0304 Cobras. So that's why we're stepping it up to the KMJ, and it's actually a bigger case. So if that fills you in. Okay, another little tech tip. Also, you can see the amount that was grinded. Very minimal amount. You can barely see it, honestly. But just a tiny bit, grind that off. Also, make sure you sand this. This is your grounding tab for the alternator. That's how it operates, basically. And go ahead and sand the one on your timing cover as well. All right guys, so I was just mocking up belts because belts is always a little tricky when you're running an aftermarket setup. I used the Metco belt guide on their website to get me in the ballpark. I had this one laying around, which is actually an 825, and it actually kind of fits. The blower isn't bolted down. So I put it on there just for mock-up, but 825 or maybe slightly smaller. We do have to go up in alternator size, so I already ordered that, or alternator pulley size. So that is on the way, so we won't even be putting this belt on for installation. If any of you guys has a 2.9 billet flow, let me know. Otherwise, we're gonna press this hub off and get some Metco pulleys on. But my plan is to run a 2.9 6-pound lower, which is gonna be pretty rowdy, especially with the compression of this engine. But yeah, in case you guys were wondering, 6-pound lower from Metco, the Metco hub. And that also comes with this bracket tree right here. You can see that. This is a Metco 100 mil idler. This is a Metco 100 mil idler. So a lot of really good parts. It's cool that Metco still makes parts for Terminator Cobras, which is awesome because not a lot of people do anymore. Same thing goes with KMJ alternators. They still support the 0304 Cobra platform, which is awesome. All right, so I'm mostly at a standstill right now. This is the coolant crossover that Blake just powder coated. Looks awesome. And the O-rings, this is what I had here from an O-ring kit. They're just too thick. It's not gonna work. So I'm gonna have to go to probably Ace tomorrow and fit up some O-rings. But yeah, these aren't gonna work. All right, so the coolant crossover is mounted, looks pretty good. Blower is bolted down and we have a belt on it. This one's a little bit long, but we do have a larger alternator pulley coming in, so we'll kind of feel out the belt size. We got a set of DW95s we're gonna be throwing in this. So we should have plenty of fuel for 600 wheel on E85. DW95s are a pretty solid injector, basically 1000 cc. So let's go ahead and get them mounted in the rails. Guys, there's an unfortunate issue with dowel pins. The trans was in and now it's back out. So here's the predicament. this has a dowel. That's supposed to be there. The bell housing has a dowel stuck in it. Aluminum is very, very fragile in terms of extracting it. It only had a little bit sticking out, so made the executive decision to pull the one out of the iron block. Well, guess what? This guy doesn't really want to move. So tried tapping some threads into it. That didn't work. Tried vice grips, tried a lot of different things. It does spin a little bit. Yeah, we're not having too much luck. So advised possibly a slight press, and I'll show you the little configuration thing. We're gonna go ahead and tap the dowel to 9/16, and my last resort option is to weld some sort of nut on it. But the problem is welding a nut still doesn't really fix the problem. I don't know if this tap's gonna work though. It might. Last resort is to use the old welder and weld something on there. Let's see if it works. Well, let me tell you what, this is what's left of that dowel. We tried a little bit of everything. The press didn't work because the 9/16 tap was a little bit too large. So what happened was it took too much material away and started collapsing the outside. Now that did end up working out pretty well because it would remove the material inside while still keeping the block pretty safe. Eventually, we ended up welding, got the welder out, welded this to the dowel. The dowel then cracked, and then we were left with what was left inside here. Basically drill, tap, various different tools, and it finally backed off on the drill, and now we are ready to install the bell housing. This was an operation from 10 a.m. to about around 3 o'clock between going to Ace Hardware and all the various methods, and we finally got this out. So now I can put the bell housing on, because the reason why I removed it from the block was because the bell housing had it stuck in there, and the aluminum is not going to be as durable as this iron. The bell housing very much could have been damaged from trying to extract that, and we already tried slightly and it was not budging. So that's what it looks like. Now should be able to put this. All right guys, well, check it out. Bell housing's back off. We're having some issues getting the trans in. You know, I think there is maybe some slight misalignment from the two discs, or something was going on. Took the clutch off and determined that, well, maybe they were slightly misaligned, and now they're aligned. You know, both discs are spinning. But this caught my eye right there. So I don't know, maybe all this fiasco of the trans not going in and that and this, maybe this is a sign, hey, let's go ahead and let's do a clutch. Because last thing I want to do is get this car all together and burn up the clutch on the dyno. This, it may still work properly, but at some point this might start disintegrating past there. It's a McLeod RST, it's already the wrong clutch, it's still a 10 spline. Let's go ahead and do the 26 spline upgrade. Let's do it once, do it right, and skip this altogether. So trans back out, but we have the bell housing issue fixed. So now we just got to get the 26 spline and get the clutch on the way. The 26 spline is already on its way, so we'll do the input shaft swap. All right guys, so as we spoke yesterday, the RST decided to throw in the towel. This is not a huge deal right here, but I'm gonna be sending this car pretty hard. I took all this as a sign, let's go ahead and get this swapped out with a clutch that's better suited, and hopefully I won't have to be in here anytime soon. I knew this clutch wasn't gonna last a long time. I didn't think it would not last the engine going in, but regardless, let's go ahead and get this pulled out. Over here, we have an RXT 1200 or HD, something like that. It's the one step above the base RXT, light and steel flywheel. We're gonna go ahead and get this on. Big difference here is this one is 26 spline. So we're gonna be doing the 26 spline input shaft swap. We're gonna be good for you know, 800 horsepower now, which is essentially what everything else is designed for. Okay, well, some of you guys have been commenting what's taking so long with the Cobra build. Well, it has escalated. Right here we have a T56 Magnum for an 03 Cobra, and we're gonna be putting that in here. So the other T56, which is for sale, here's the whole swap. If you guys are interested, hit me up. But there's nothing wrong with this T56. However, I stumbled across a car that came with a T56 Magnum, so I bought the whole car. And now we have a brand new T56 Magnum. We also picked up a McLeod RXT 1200. We're gonna get that installed. We got a measure for the pivot ball. I think we got a clearance clutch fork. We got a few little things to do, but we're gonna get all that stuff wrapped up and hopefully get the motor back in the car today. So this build has escalated. However, we now have a clutch good for 800 plus, really 1,000 horsepower. We have a trans good for 1,000 horsepower. We have a motor good for 1,000 horsepower. That's how it always goes. We got a blower good for 500-600, but that's good. We can always change that later if we want to change it. But I think this is going to be a super fun combo. Okay, so with these T56 Magnums and the regular ones, when you use the twin disc, typically you have to do the pivot ball. So we got a 7/8 socket, and we're going to go ahead and loosen this. That's the one that comes with the Magnum. The stock T56 one is also similar. We have that. We have this adjustable pivot ball stud, but we are going to have to cut this down. We're just going to kind of get some baseline measurements, bring it in, see where it lies. All right, so we got the McLeod RXT installed. You can see the blue mark lines up. That means it was balanced together like that. Did have to go to the hardware store, find these bolts here. Those seem to work pretty well. We're now ready to start measuring for the pivot ball, and I think I also have to clearance some stuff for the T56 Magnum. All right, so after a lot of measuring using the old caliper tool, what we went ahead and did, we took the stock measurement, pivot ball length, got it a baseline. Essentially, we took 6 mil off, also measured the preload between the bell housing and clutch. I'll put these measurements up on here. And it's very easy to calculate a hydraulic slave cylinder because it sits flush there and you don't have any of this bind, essentially, where this kind of maxes out. But generally, from what I found online, people take 6 mil off of that. So what we ended up is a installed height of 21.5, and the stock was right about that 27.5 millimeters. So basically 6 mil off of the factory measurement. That's going to give us basically the added clearance we need for the twin disc, and we should be good to go. This is basically how this actuates. It pushes the clutch in. You want to make sure that you have some room back here. Some people clearance back here, but I think that these new T56s, they have clearanced it already. All right, guys, so the trans is finally in. We actually had to pull it back out, had to clearance the fork, so we had a little bit of play. You always want a little bit of play so that we can put the preload on it with the clutch cable, and we should have plenty of throw to get and obviously disengage and engage the clutch. T56 Magnum is in. I think we might wrap this video up. I still got a ton more work to do to the car. guys have liked the video series so far on the Terminator Cobra, please hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and hopefully we'll have the Terminator Cobra up and ripping here very soon. It should be a really, really fun setup. So hopefully everything goes according to plan. Took a little bit slower on this process, but you know, if we'll have a better end product in the end. So we'll see you guys in the next one.